I am delighted to be able to say very briefly, and I will be very brief because I think we're running a little bit behind, and I really want you all to have a chance to engage with both of our speakers who did a wonderful job in setting the stage. I think the structure of today's conversation has been nicely set in motion by Natsu's wonderful précis of all of the really fascinating features of this exhibition and what it aims to do, and very interesting factoids that I think some of us would not have been aware of otherwise. And so we start from the specific and go to a rather long view offered by both David Clark and Joanne Burney-Dansker of the contextual issues involved in this exhibition and in all of the work that aspires to be culturally interconnected. I have to say just one little biographical thing here because you're wondering, what's she doing there? She's not a specialist in Chinese or Japanese or any other kind of Asian art. She's not a modernist. What could she possibly have to say about it? And of course, that's a good question. But as someone who stood in line at the post office to the amazement of an Italian postal worker who said to my Italian last name, my American passport, my Dutch bank account, what? You're studying Dutch art? But why? There's no art and there's no history. And I think that we are very much aware of the ways in which art represents us individually as part of a culture and cultures more broadly. And I had a lot of chances to think about these issues within the study of European art, because after all, the Netherlands was Italy's other in a certain kind of narrative and set of aspirations about art. And I think both of these talks have plunged us right into the heart of issues that are timely and pressing for everyone involved in art history, and I'd like to think in the art world in general. Both of these papers represent really wonderful examples of the rethinking of terms and procedures that have defined the discipline of art history, certainly during the 20th century. And I am thinking here of issues like influence, cultural binarisms. The East-West is one that has dogged us, I think, for the greater part of this century, and indeed, that is to say, this century and the previous century. I keep forgetting that we're actually in the 21st. And it's one of the issues that we as educators are really trying very, very hard to deal with. And I guess my other credential for being here is that I have been one of the people overseeing a cross and comparative cultural introductory course on art and art history. It is very challenging. It is very exciting. It changes the way one thinks about everything. And I think David Clark rightly points to cultural compartmentalization and national histories as these foundational structures in art history that are very problematic, very much under pressure, fortunately, and the need for more culturally integrated histories and accounts of art is very urgent. But I would also say that this is not just an art historical, but a geopolitical problem, and both of these speakers have shown us that in treating art in the context of permeable cultures, which all cultures are actually by definition, and heterogeneous artistic spaces, we become aware of the extent to which histories, which were once kept separate, are absolutely always deeply implicated in one another. And there are many different ways to get at that. Art history has, even in its most traditional operations, the possibilities for doing this. And I think we saw this on the one hand in David Clark's talk. He kind of shows you how doing a sort of monographic approach, that is to say, you can take an artist and follow the trajectories of a life and life experiences, and this is certainly one of the things that this exhibition does, and it will show you, if you just open your eyes, it will show you the ways in which histories interconnect. So people, individual artists, can serve as nexes, but there's also, and this was, I think, very beautifully brought out by Joanne Burney-Dansker in her talk, there's also a way in which art objects are mobile. We've known this forever, but we don't always take it into account. And when you think about the space of artistic production as being heterogeneous, all of these works of art moving about, and moving about very purposefully when curators, and in this case, I thought very interestingly, artist curators, are putting them in proximity or into different settings where they are being acted upon. One of the interesting things I started thinking about because of the use of terms, they obviously matter. They're all freighted in one way or another, and we struggle with the connotative meanings that come in and the value judgments that come into our use of terms. And I think we have turned to encounter as a way, as one of the ways that we get around the sort of monodirectional notion of influence. X influenced Y, and as Michael Baxendale quite rightly pointed out years ago, but that seems backwards. It's Y making something of X, changing the location of agency, but encounter seems to put it in a different perspective. It seems to suggest that there is something happening that could be bidirectional. And when I looked up, just for fun, what does encounter mean in a dictionary way, it was very interesting to see that it's a meeting, especially one that is unplanned, unexpected, or brief. And these issues came up rather repeatedly in the conversation so far. So this chance aspect, but also a hostile or adversarial confrontation, that's one that I think we suppress a little bit, but that pops up in the way that different artistic vocabularies or cultural forms of expression are coded. So it can be, in a dictionary way, a violent or confrontational clash, an unexpected meeting, you come upon, you encounter an old friend, you confront, you come up against. But the common denominator in all these various usages is this chance meeting, this unexpected meeting. And I think this is a very interesting antidote to a great deal of deterministic art historical thinking. And we've seen how the chance encounter has very much an array of unexpected and quite productive at times consequences. I would also say, and we can talk about this as we think about questions, one of the other things that struck me as interesting is the distinction between what artists aim to do and what others make of what they have done. And no matter what the artist intends, things happen because of expectations. So I thought it was interesting that once you make an exhibition, the response to the exhibition will be in terms of what people are able to say about it and their cultural prejudices. I thought we could talk about the question of misreading and how that can be put in a positive light, but it also presupposes that there is a correct reading. And so there are lots of issues of value and value judgment that come in here that are quite interesting and problematic, I think, for us to deal with, especially when we are trying to be open and integrated and not prejudice our accounts of what's going on. So I will stop there and let our speakers come up and have a comfortable seat.